Hello, my name is Brooke Roberts. I'm with Jubally Do-It-Yourself Tax Solutions. We're here today to talk about your property tax protest and some of the basic information that you need to be prepared for as you're going to protest your tax value with the appraisal district. With me from American Property Tax, a licensed property tax consultant, Ali. How are you?
Good, good. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Ali, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been practicing property tax for over 18 years now, and we have a very small firm in Stafford, Texas. We tend to do more commercial and industrial properties, but I got my start doing residential properties.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being with us today and kind of walking us through some of this. So
Sure,
I'm just
no
going to
problem.
start off with some of these questions that sometimes our clients ask us, and I think are good questions just from the general public. So, what's the purpose of this property tax that we have here in Texas?
Well, it's funny you say that. I get that question asked the most. And the purpose of property tax is basically, if you want a shorted version of it, it's to pay for civilization, to pay for services, pay for hospitals, schools, police officers, firefighters. I mean, your basic social services that you have in the jurisdiction that you live in. In some cases, utility, underground utility, and underground, for water and electricity and gas. All these things. I understand you have a bill for those other things, but in order to get those services installed in a new neighborhood, there's going to be, in the beginning, a MUD tax, which stands for Municipal Utility District. And the good thing about that is once it gets paid off, there's a loan amount on the utility tax, basically what it costs to put in all those utilities in a brand new neighborhood. Once that loan is paid off, then it basically connects to city services, and that tax is removed from your tax bill. But you're always on city services. The MUD tax is there to pay for the installation of those services prior to the new home going on to the property.
So some states have an income tax. We have a property tax here in
That's right.
in Texas. All
Yeah,
right.
we have a gasoline tax, we have a property tax, and we have a nationwide income tax. We have no state income tax.
So it can be kind of alarming because the state asks the counties to form an appraisal district, and they assess our property, our residential property, on January 1st of every year, and then they send us out a statement sometime March, April.
The beginning of March, usually, depending on how big the appraisal district is. The bigger it is, the later it comes out. But the smaller ones, they tend to come out the end of February, beginning of March. That's correct.
And then they've provided us a way to protest or appeal that notice or that decision that they've made for our property. Is that correct?
Yes. So basically, the value that they're coming up with. Let's start with this. The value that they're coming up with is basically the activity that happened in tax year 2021, calendar year 2021. Excuse me. So any of the sales that were in the neighborhood is going to affect your new value for the value that they sent out to you. So when you receive this in the mail, it has some instructions on there. Basically, if you wish to protest your property, basically some of them you just flip it over on the back, and the protest form is right there. Some of them have an attached piece of paper, which is another protest form, and obviously it has a deadline to file. Now, about 80% to 90% of the properties, the deadline to file is May 15th. Now, the other 20%, you're probably thinking, well, what's the other 20% deadline to file? Well, if it's a new home or a new sale or some new activities happen in that neighborhood, you may get your notice afterwards, maybe after May or after June or even in July. I've seen some value notices come in as late as October. Well, if that's the case, you still haven't received your notice, then your deadline to file is 30 days after you receive your notice. So, for example, if you receive your notice July 1st, your new deadline is, beginning of August. the end of July. That's your new deadline. It's 30 days afterwards. And basically, they all come with their own. Some of these smaller counties come with their own specialty forms, but the statewide form to file a protest is always available on the comptroller's office, and that's this next slide that just popped up. And it's the property owner's notice of protest. Now, you fill in the basic information. You want to make sure that your name, address, mailing address, and property address are filled out. If you have the account number, it really helps. That goes in the upper right-hand corner. Along with the tax year, you're going to put tax year 2022, and then the account number right underneath that. And of course, you put your information right there where it says name, address, phone number, email address if possible. And then we'll skip down to the section 3 where it says, what does that say there? Reasons for protest. So we're going to just click the first one or check the first one. It says incorrect market value. Now that incorrect market value basically translates to properties that, if you want to use a sales comparison or if you want to use a real-time comparison of what other properties are being valued at, and that's called the fair and equal protest. And there's two types. So, of course, the sales approach and then the comparable approach. The comparable just compares you to whoever else that's on your street or in your neighborhood with the same characteristics as yourself. So you want to check off that first check mark. Now, let's say you just purchased a home. You can put in at the very bottom there, that I think that's step 4, any kind of extra information and your opinion of value. So you want to give, let's just say, for example, the value that the district came out with was $500,000 for your market value. Mm-hmm. Well, you just purchased your property for $420,000. So you want to put your opinion right there at $420,000. Again, this is optional. You don't need to put an opinion of value. And the reason I say that is you have no idea what the evidence looks like yet that they're comparing you to. So you can leave that out if you like, or if you have a very straightforward case, you just put your opinion of value right there, and then an explanation saying that I just recently purchased my home in 2021, and this is what I paid for it. And you can also attach any supporting documentation, and the supporting documentation the district loves to have is the closing statement for that sale. And in that closing statement, hopefully it's showing some real estate commissions, being that the home was on the open market and it sold. Being on the open market, they'll basically qualify that sale as a valid sale, and you should have pretty easy experience and getting your value lowered. If not, if you've purchased your home and you've lived in it for about 5 or 6 years and you're having problems with it, well, that section underneath there where it says comments, you can provide comments like, my house recently had a fire in it, or we had a flood, and we have estimates and we have pictures, and you can just put it there and tally up all your estimates and give them a single line item total as to what it costs. Again, you can put that in that section down there for reasons for protest. And
then just attach those estimates in the images to the protest form. Okay.
Exactly. Now, some counties, much like Harris is the biggest one. You can file your protest electronically, and I believe that's called iFile, and that's what they call it. And you can file that online. A little format that's very similar to this one, but it also allows you to upload attachments. You can upload your closing statement. You can upload your pictures, your estimates, and any other evidence you wish to use. Now, in the history of my own business, I feel that the more information that you give them up front, the more reasonable they're going to be with you and working with you on getting a better value. The less information you give them, or just want to provide everything at last minute, you may get an unfavorable ruling. But so I advise people to give all the evidence up front.
That's important to know. One of the things that we've talked to some of our users about is maybe waiting until closer to May 15th to submit that in, so that if you don't have your evidence, or we haven't been able to generate a report for you through our website, that gives you a little bit extra time for either for that value to be generated, or maybe your hearings will be scheduled a little bit later as well. And then I've also heard of users that have said that they're trying to file their notice of protest online, and that field that says, what do you feel like is your value, it's a required field. And so it doesn't necessarily matter what you put in there. So you could put $1 in there just so that you're filing your form. Is that right?
Well, yeah, you could put $1 in there, but that's kind of coming off as probably a little snarky.
Okay.
What I would do is I would get last year's value and go from there. Obviously, everything has gone up from last year. I would look at last year's value, and if last year's value is still a little bit high based on estimates and pictures or anything else that you may believe, I would start with last year's value first and then go back if need be. And then, in your case, yes, correct. Your evidence hasn't been, the Jubally evidence probably isn't ready by then, and that's still no problem. You don't have to include the Jubally evidence at the time of filing the protest. You can present that at the hearing, and even if you're doing the I-file, an appraiser is going to contact you and ask you, is there any evidence you wish to include in your hearing? And then that's another time, a second time, you're able to send them the info. And by then, I'm sure that the Jubally evidence will be ready for upload to them.
That's good. So when we get our notice of value in the mail, some of the figures on there can be a little confusing. There's a column that says it's our market value. Then there's a column that says appraised value. What's that?
Okay.
What's the difference between that?
The funny thing is, and again, I get asked this all the time. Why do I have two values? And why, if they're saying my house is appraised at this much, when usually the appraised is lower, then why did they have this other value called the market, which is much higher? I'm going to give it to you in one sentence. Market value is what they say you can sell your house for. Appraised value is taxable value, what you're going to be paying tax on. So, for example, if your market value is $500,000 and it's showing an appraised value of $450,000, well, you're going to be taxed on the $450,000 minus the 20% for your homestead exemption, if you have a homestead exemption. If you have investment property, you have 10 or 15 houses, well, your market and your appraised will be exactly the same. Exactly the same. So the market and appraised, it works like this. When you have a homestead exemption, when I said it could sell for 500 or more, well, your hearing starts at 500,000. Okay, so you have to prove that your house is worth less than 500,000 based on comps and sales, comps or sales or condition or estimates. And then you have, so if, for example, if your market is 500,000 and your appraised is 450, and you purchased your home for 410, well, when you turn in your evidence and you have a closing statement there, well, they're going to reduce that 99% of the time from 500 all the way down to 410. The savings you actually received was from 450 minus 40,000, which got you to that 410. So now you saved $40,000 in value, which will kind of equate out to about $1,000 in tax savings. So if you have, for example, the Jubally evidence that comes out and it says, well, we think your value should be based on comps and sales should be around 390. Well, if you're successful in that hearing and you get the value down to 390, then you're talking about 450 minus the 390, which is $60,000 reduction. And every 30,000, I'd like to say, is close to $1,000 in taxes. So that's about $3,000 in taxes.
So similar to that,
$2,000 in taxes.
Thanks, Ollie. This is real helpful. So similar to that question, if let's say I've got my notice comes out and it says that I'm at 500, that our market value is 500,000, but I'm only assessed at 450,000. And then Jubally's evidence comes in and maybe it's 475,000 on the market value, but it doesn't really reduce the assessed value. Should I still protest?
And the answer
it's really not going to.
Yes.
It's not going to save me any money this year.
You're exactly right. It won't save you money, but it's going to do this. your baseline for next year, for 2023, will be at 470. So let's just say the Jubally evidence gets it to 470, and by some you take it to the board or the informal hearing, and they're able to reduce it for you to 470. You got zero tax savings, but your value got reduced from market. Your market of 500 got reduced to 470, but your appraised down here is at 450. So to save any money, you need to be at 449. But it is a good reason to protest, because if you let this go undone and leave it at 500, you literally can never go back to that 500, that 470 ever again, because it starts over next year. Every year stands on its own, and they use the previous year's value as a base to go forward. So yes, in the end, your cap is going to, in the city that we live in, as far as Houston is concerned, is very aggressive. It's a very aggressive market right now, and that cap, your appraised value, will catch up to your market, and then you'll be at market, and appraised will be even, and then you'll just be like any other house. You'll just get a little bit of a discount, a 20% discount for having a homestead, but you never want to let it go unprotested.
Yeah, I was on the phone with one of our users this morning in Travis County, and she was talking about her $1.4 million property that had increased by 56% last year. And so this kind of shows why you would want to keep going back for the protest.
Yes, and I've actually had clients that if we hadn't have done that, hadn't filed those protests year after year after year, we were able to get a very good reduction and beat the value down all the way from 700,000 down to 300,000 one time. It was in 2007, and from that basis, we just, it slowly started to catch up, but it took 10 or 15 years for that. 300,000, it went to 330,000 the next year as far as the appraised value, because they can only go up 10%. It protects you for 10%. Now, this is just in the case of homesteaded properties, but if you're an investor, you definitely want to make sure you protest no matter what.
It's worth that
Go ahead.
Worth that $80 that Jubally charges, right?
Absolutely. I didn't even know it was that low.
All right. I think we've covered this one about the homestead exemption applied, but they are pretty much going to, if I've got my homestead on there, they're pretty much going to increase me by 10% consistently every year. Is that right?
Until it catches up to the market, which is what your house could sell for. If you actually absolutely do nothing about it, you don't protest, you just get your homestead exemption and go, then yes, it'll finally catch up. If it's lower, it'll finally catch up to the market at some point. Good. And the next question, what happens if go back to that one.
Oh, okay.
What happens if my market value and appraised value are the same? Well, call Jubally.
That's right. All right. So tell us about, once I've given the appraisal district my notice to protest. They set an appointment with me. What comes next? Okay.
So let me throw in a little life hack, because I know your users like this. So the beauty of a property owner protesting their own property is in Harris County. I don't know about other counties, but in Harris County, let it be known that you can get up to two reschedules, max. 2 reschedules. So if there's anything that goes wrong, we have the world, right? We have kids, we have jobs, we have doctors, we have, all these different appointments, and somehow they always fall on the same day. And well, that's okay. They understand that, and they allow up to 2 reschedules. For agents like us, this is our business, is our livelihood. They give us 0 reschedules. So just wanted to throw that in there first. So when they do schedule you, it'll show on your paper if it's an HCAD meeting or an ARB meeting, okay? That's how Harris County labels their hearings. Other appraisal districts, I've seen informal hearing and formal hearing. They have 2 different dates. So an informal hearing is a mere courtesy. The state does not, and I'm going to repeat this, does not, force the appraisal districts to give you an informal hearing. This is simply a courtesy, maybe speed things up in the county that's very busy with lots of protests. So what they do is they give you an informal hearing. And what that is you go sit down with a single person, an appraiser. You give them your evidence. You guys chit chat through. Listen, I'm going to be upfront and honest with you again. They're not going to give you the Jubally value. They're not going to give me my opinion of value. They're going to take their sales. They're going to take a couple of your sales, and they're going to come up with a median value. Some appraisers may just give you the Jubally value directly, and I've had that happen many times, especially at the ARB level, because the evidence looks so good. It looks way better, and it's a lot easier to understand than the evidence that's provided by the county. So when the county's giving their evidence, it's very, it doesn't look as good. It's not as clean.
It looks like a government document.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you guys make everything easy to understand. You have a map of where the subject property is, and then a map and dots on all the locations of all the comps being used. Well, Harris County doesn't have anything like that, and that's why usually the ARB will side with me, and I will actually get the Jubally value. But in case you don't feel that they're picking on you or they're discriminating on you, they have a boss above them, and they have to take a couple of your sales and a couple of their sales, and in the end you'll get a reduction. That's the informal. Now the formal.
And I think it's important to remember that at that informal, that's an employee of the appraisal district. That's an appraiser
that's for example, if it's in Harris County, that's an HCAD employee, HCAD appraiser doing that hearing with you. And just keep this in mind as well. Some of the higher dollar properties, I want you guys to understand this, that those informal appraisers have a limit of $100,000 for the accounts that they're working. Anything higher than that, they're going to need a supervisor's approval. So the evidence needs to be ironclad if you're trying to get more than $100,000 reduction. So if you don't, if you're looking at your evidence and you're like, yeah, I'm asking for a $200,000 reduction, and it's not a recent sale, it's just based off of sales data, well, just go ahead and save yourself the time. Do not go to the informal, because they're going to say, well, I can only reduce it 100,000. That's not going to do anything for you. So immediately just request the formal hearing.
I tell our users sometimes, especially if they're going in with the data that we provide them and it's based on the uniform and equal rationale, I tell them a lot of times, don't expect that appraiser to make an adjustment, but it's good practice so that you're getting familiar with your evidence and with your data so that you're ready for your appraisal, your ARB meeting.
Exactly. Again, they're going to, at that informal level, it's not that they're very proud of their evidence or they want to have the upper hand on you. They have their uniform and equal evidence as well. So they're going to look at both of those, your evidence and their evidence, like, well, they're going to say that their evidence already supports the value. So there's no reason beating that dog with a stick repeatedly. There's just no reason for it. Now sales, they're only taking 3 or 5 sales. I think it's 3 now. Anyway, so use 3 sales. The rule of thumb is 3. Take the ones that are the closest in size and closest in characteristics. What I mean by characteristics is classification of property. So if your house is an A grade house, and then you see a few sales in your neighborhood and they're much lower, but it's the same square footage, but they happen to be a C grade house, well, they're going to throw that out. It's not comparable. You can't compare, for example, an all brick house to an all siding house. It just doesn't, there's too much adjustments have to be made to make you similar for that comp to be comparable.
So to summarize this, the informal meeting with the appraiser, the employee of, I may not necessarily come to and that's a courtesy. I may not come to an agreement there. And so they'll then give me an opportunity to appear before a panel. And I think this year there's an option to appear before a one-person ARB panel. And those ARB members are just community members like me?
Well, they're not just community members. They have to own and reside in, own a home and reside in Harris County. That's the rule. So if they're renting in an apartment, they don't qualify. You have to own a home, and your homestead has to be in Harris County. That's one of the qualifications. So the tricky part with this is they are housed, these are ARB members, they're housed by HCAT, they're trained by HCAT, so they don't feel that that if you get an unfavorable ruling, it's because they already have Harris County already has the upper hand on these people, in that they pay them, they train them, and they house them. So you're basically going up against 4 people instead of 1.
But they have a charge to be unbiased and look at the data.
Yes, that's correct. They're supposed to weigh each case separately on its own, and based on the presentation, whoever has the better presentation and the better evidence, because the burden of proof for that value of 500,000 is with the district. If you look in your evidence and there's no sales that happened from 1/1 of 2021 to 1/1 of 2022, and there's no sales, and they increased your value, well, you should go back to last year's value, and that's what your opinion of value should be. But yes, and going back to the size of the ARBs, the option this year is to have a single member ARB, and you also be in there with the appraiser. The appraiser is going to give their evidence and presentation, and you will give your evidence and presentation, and that one ARB member will do some calculations. And if they're touching their calculator, that's a great sign, because they're already going to offer a reduction. You just don't know what it is until they finally say it. So you need to have 3 copies, one for you, one for the appraiser, and one for the ARB member. Now, if you appear before the full ARB panel, which is 3 members, you're going to have 5 copies of your evidence, one for you, one for the appraiser, and one for each of the ARB members.
Gotcha. So this question may be talking about, what if I don't live in a Jubally County? Should I contact my realtor? How do I select comps? How do I find this evidence and take it to my hearing?
Okay, so if you don't reside in a county where Jubally provides their services, there's a couple of things you can do. First and foremost, like I told you before, just a few seconds ago, that the burden of proof lies with the appraisal district. They have to give you their evidence 14 days prior to the hearing. So right in that evidence alone, you can probably find some sales that could get you a reduction. Of course, their fair and equal presentation is not going to help you. It's basically going to help them to support their value. So you need to look for sales. Now, let's just say there was no sales in that evidence that the district provides. You can contact your realtor. Your realtor can provide, everyone knows a real estate agent by now. If you don't, I know 10. And so you can just call one of them. It's called a CMA, Comparable Market Analysis Report. That's what it's called. So you ask them to do a CMA of homes that are in your neighborhood, and you need about 5 to 10 properties that sold for less than what yours is valued at. In that time frame of 1/1 of 2021 to 1/1 of 2022. So you request that from the realtor. It literally takes them about 15 seconds to do this, and they'll send it to you in a PDF format, and you can present that as evidence.
Okay.
Granted that the house was not a foreclosure or an as-is, where-is, but most of the sales on HAR are they're going to be good sales. Those as-is, where-is, and off-the-market sales, they're never going to hit HAR. So
you were talking about, here I'm going to skip ahead to the next question. You were talking about the evidence that the appraisal district is going to use in the hearing, and is there a way to obtain that information? So I want to show a letter here that you can use as a template to request that information. We call this the House Bill 201 package. Could you talk about it, Ali?
Yeah. Okay. So whenever you protest file a protest and submit it, the county receives it and automatically generates an evidence packet to support their claim on the value. They have to give you this packet within 14 days prior to the hearing, so you have plenty of time to review it, and that's 14 days prior to the ARB hearing, not the informal. The informal, usually they'll still have it, but requirement by the state of Texas is 14 days. So there's a few ways of getting it. First way of getting it, of course, is the old-fashioned way of submitting a letter like that, and they mail it to you. The second way is show up to the appraisal district, go to the information and assistance counter, and give them your account number, and they'll print it out and hand it to you, or your address, account number or address. Some appraisal districts may charge you 10 cents a page for the copies that's being printed for you, which is fine. Be sure to have at least $3-4 with you in cash. It's easier. Some places may charge a fee for using a credit card. But yeah, just have about $3-4 with you in cash, and get your copy that way. Or if you filed your protest online, especially with a county like Harris County, you do an iFile protest. Well, your evidence is right there online when you log back into their software. You can download your evidence under the Residential Hearing Evidence tab. It'll say it, and you just click on it. It's usually a 17 or more page report, and you can print it out, or you can print out the pages that you want and go forward with it.
One of the things that has occurred to me, or has happened to me in my own personal property, is I've requested this package and they provide it to me, and I look on there and I'm like, that property that they're using is on the other side of town, and so I get to possibly throw that one out if it's not favorable to my argument.
That's right. Some of the districts will put distance from subject, and they'll have the mileage, or I think it's mileage away from your home. Or, for example, let's just say you live on a street that behind you there's a Kroger's, or in front of you there's an elementary school, or you're on a busier side of the street, like for example, you live on Bel Air, and those other sales that they're using are tucked away sales that are internal, and they don't have the same negative effect as you do. So yes, you can throw those out and say, hey, give me some sale comps that are comparable to me. And that's what I like about the Jubally software, is it shows where the sales are on a map, and in respect to where your personal home is.
Yeah. So what do you feel is the benefit of using Jubally to obtain that lower market value?
Well, their software has helped me basically filter out the properties that I don't need to see. It supports a value that's going to give me the optimal value reduction. Again, never is guaranteed, and it's as good as your presentation is as well. So I love Jubally because it filters out all the higher sales or the higher comps. It does all the calculations on there per the county's requirement. So, age and grade and size, it does all those calculations for you automatically.
And one of the things that you, I think, had pointed out to me recently is we don't just give you all, 10 properties that are lower than your property. We're also giving you some that are higher, because you've got to have that median case. You've got to have those in order to make your argument.
That's right. I've actually presented that exact thing you just said in an ARB, and I literally took them to that comparable page, and I said, look, 3 of these homes that are on this report are actually have a higher notice market value than the subject does. So we're just not skimming the lowest ones, but there are a lot more lower ones than higher ones. And again, why should you be paying more tax than your next door neighbor? If you're at 500 and everyone else is enjoying 450, 420, 435, why do you need to be at 500? That's part of the Texas property tax code. No person should be paying more than their fair share.
We've talked about what happens if Jubilee's not in my county. How should I proceed? And so we talked about the calling the realtor. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Well, if you don't have a realtor friend, some of these properties are like ranch properties, or but anyway, if you don't have any sales data, you can always go with condition. Okay, and what I mean by condition is, what condition is your home in? Are there cracks in the wall? Is your pool not functioning? Hasn't been functioning for the past 5 years or whatever? You are having doors that are not closing correctly? You have very old windows. You have just general condition. and is in need of a, repair, well, you would need pictures and evidence. Basically, your evidence would be your estimates. Sorry, not evidence. You would need pictures and estimates supporting your claim. Again, add those together and subtract it from the market value. And if that's reasonable enough for you and you're happy with that, then that should work. And some of the outer counties that you guys are not in, they're actually a lot easier to work with you one-on-one based on that.
And then this question is about January 1st. So if I had purchased my home after January 1st of the previous year, and you already, I believe, addressed that a lot of times the appraisal district will just accept your closing statement as your market value.
Yes. So what you're saying is January 1st of 2021 moving forward, not January 21st of 22, which I'll touch on. Yes. And some of the counties like Travis and Harris, who have had extreme activity, extremely high sales activity, they will try to add on what's called a time adjustment, saying, for example, Brooke, if you bought your house in February for $450, and now the homes closer to the end of the year, November, December of 2021, are selling for $500, $525. This is like a bidding war going on. They're going to want to add a time adjustment to those sales and bring your value up and say, well, I just paid $450 for my house. Why should I pay a penny more? Well, their appraisal date is 1/1 of 2022, January 1st of 2022. So they're going to want to get the closed sales they can and use those and basically give you a time adjustment based on those sales. What I've learned in my 15 plus years of doing this, the ARB, the Appraisal Review Board, the formal level does not like time adjustments at all. They say the person just bought their house, the value should be for what they paid for it. Now, let's just say, Brooke, you just purchased your home February of 2022, okay, after the appraisal date. Well, there's two scenarios. One scenario could be, well, there's enough sales that happened in 2021. They don't need your sale. They're not going to accept it. They're going to be like, we have plenty. If you fall on that nice appraiser that could go both ways, that says, yeah, we have plenty of activity, but, well, it's kind of close to January 1. I'll give it to you. That's a courtesy. Believe me, just hug that person if they'll let you, because that's amazing. I've seen them go as far out as March sometimes. Now, if there's no sales activity in your neighborhood and you basically got it for what you paid for it, again, you paid $450 for it. We keep using this example. You paid $450 for it in February, and the January 1 value that the district sent to you was $520. Well, based on what? And there's no sales in the previous year, 2021. It should hold some water. They're not required to give it to you, but they have to prove where they came up with that 520 or 525 value. And then again, your closing statement should take over.
Okay. All right. Any tips for getting prepared for the meeting?
Okay. First thing, this is the biggest tip I can give you. Again, this comes from many years of doing this. Do not bring emotion to the door. I know you're proud of your house. I know you live in a beautiful house and you're very proud of it. Nobody knows your street like you do. Nobody knows your hood like you do. And when you bring that emotion, you're dealing with another person. And in some cases, you're dealing with 4 other people. It's best to be respectful, nice, and present your evidence. As far as preparation for your hearing, I recommend that you put everything in a very easily digestible format. Again, thanks to Jubally. They literally are not paying me to say this, but I love the way their evidence looks. It's a very easily, it's a nice packet that has exactly what they need to see, nothing more. Keep the brown nosing to a minimum. They can see right past that. Okay, they're trained. They see probably 6 to 7. Each person sees about 600 to 700 homeowners every single year, every single tax season.
Wow.
So they're kind of prepared for that. So again, present your facts. Have everything prepared. If you're going to bundle up some home pictures and estimates with the Jubally report, man, that's great. Make sure the Jubally report is one part of your evidence, and your condition pictures and your estimates are another part of your evidence. And present them separately, not all at one time. Not in the middle of the sales report, just run over to your condition pictures and be like, oh, look at my house. Look at this picture, and look at their picture. Just present them separately. The appraiser has training. They can figure it out. It's not that big of a deal. But again, like I said, be very respectful, be very prepared, be very relaxed, and no brown nose.
And Ali, finally, what happens if I disagree with the ARB's determination? What are there remedies that I can pursue following my hearing?
Absolutely. Yep. There's two remedies. The first and foremost, the end all, is going to be a lawsuit. You can sue the county. Suing the county costs at least $3,000 to $4,000 out of your pocket to file a lawsuit. You have to get an attorney. The attorney has to go through their normal preparation of documents and filings with the court, and it takes a long time. It's very painful, actually. It sometimes spills over into the next tax year, so you may not get a result until afterwards, after the next tax year. The other remedy is something called binding arbitration, which I'm sure most of your users would have probably heard, because when you get your result in the mail from the ARB, there's a little paper that comes with it. It says request for binding arbitration. And that cost is $500, I believe. And I think they have an expedited one, which is a little bit cheaper or faster. I'm not really sure, but the one that I know for sure is called binding arbitration. And what that means is you have to include a certified check for $500, and the district has to put up a check for $500. Then both of you guys meet at a neutral location with a real estate agent who is a binding arbitrator. Basically, the process starts over again. I'm going to give you an example. You basically give your testimony or your evidence to the real estate agent, and the district is sitting right there. They're also going to record it because they have to, but they're going to present their evidence, and then you shake hands, you leave, and I think a week or so later, the real estate agent, the arbitrator, has made a decision, and they mail it out to you or electronically send it to you via email, however you requested it, and with their final determination. Now, you're asking what happened to my $500 that I just spent on this. I'll tell you. So let's just say, let's use big round numbers. Let's use $1 million is the notice market value. And your opinion of value is $750,000, right? And you have plenty of evidence to support that, and the district has plenty to support the 1 million. And you've given your value, they've given their value. The arbitrator comes back and says, well, I think the value should be about 800,000. Well, 800,000 is now the new value. Now, is 800,000 closer to your opinion of value or closer to the district's opinion of value? Well, it's closer to your opinion of value. So what happens in this case is the district loses their $500 and you lose $50 from that 500, and you're sent a check back for 450, plus you're awarded with the new value of 800,000. So whoever the arbitrator value is closer to, that person will not only receive the value, but a check for 450 back.
So, and then if I lose, then I'm probably out $450.
If you lose, you're out 500.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow. Well, that's good to know.
There is one other thing I would like to touch on. Let's just say you've been on vacation for a very long time, and the value notice came in the mail, and your deadline is passed, and you can't file a protest anymore. And there's two new things that have come up that you still can protest your value, and you can still use Jubally's software. Well, the first thing you can file, and I recommend you file it immediately, but the deadline to file this correction is January 31st of 2023. Okay, so you have all the way. January 31st of 2023, for this year that we're in right now, for 2022. And that's called a 2525 correction motion for overappraised by a fourth, 25%. Now that's if you live in your home. The 25% correction motion is if you have a homestead on the property. Now, if you don't have a homestead on the property, that very same exemption exists, but it has to be appraised by 33%, overappraised by 33%. So we have 25% if you live in it, 33% if it's an investment property or you don't have a homestead on it. You have to prove it. Now the burden of proof falls on you, and that you have to prove it, and you have to have the taxes timely paid, basically before the deadline for the tax payment comes. So you can also make a partial payment on what you believe the value should have been. So if there's any discrepancy later, you will be charged the balance of it afterwards. But to qualify for the hearing, you have to pay either the full tax or what you think you should be taxed on. And then the third thing I want to mention is another correction hearing called the 2525H, as in Harry. That is a correction motion that you can file, and that's basically keeping out everyone. You cannot file a lawsuit on this. You cannot do binding arbitration on this. This is simply between you and the chief appraiser of the county, 2525H. So let's just say, I'll give another example. Brooke, there's no percentage on this. It doesn't matter where your value should fall. It could be 10,000 less, it could be 50,000 less, it could be $200,000 less. There's no percentage on this. So I'll give you an example. Brooke, if you paid $400,000 for your home and the notice came out at $500,000, you missed your deadline to file the protest. You write a simple letter that says, I would like to file a 2525H joint motion to correct with the chief appraiser, and include your closing statement. And like I said, it doesn't matter if you're asking for a $10,000 reduction or $100,000 or whatever. There's no limit, and there's no minimum, and there's no maximum. This is simply for those people that just bought their house and never knew about the fact that they could protest their value. Okay. They just let go. And somebody told them later on they can. You file this motion, the chief appraiser will mail you a letter saying, oh, yeah, you paid $400,000 and it's a valid sale. I agree with you. Great. You just you just knocked off $100,000 off your value, and you were successful. But you cannot, and I'm repeating this several times, you cannot file a lawsuit or binding arbitration on this. This is a joint motion to correct. And that's a little freebie for you guys. Okay.
You also indicated that in the recent Texas legislature session that the legislature changed the homestead exemption form so that it could be retroactively applied.
Well, the retroactively has always been there. Okay, so you can only go back 1 year though. For example, Brooke, you purchased your home in 2020, right? You moved in 2020. And in 2021, you never filed a homestead exemption, and you paid taxes based on the 2021 tax. And after finding out about this new homestead, you're like, well, I need to get my tax money back. Well, you can. You can only go back 1 year. You basically fill out the form, and they'll refund you. If your house is in escrow, your escrow company will get refunded. If your house is not in escrow, they'll send you the check directly, and you're covered from the time you purchased it till now. Now, the new legislative law that just got passed for homestead means the past one said that you had to be in there January 1st. So I'll give you another example again. Brooke, you bought your house February of 2022, right? Were you in there January of 2022? No, you weren't.
No.
So under the old law, you could not apply. You don't get the exemption at all. You get nothing. The new law says from the time you moved in. Okay, so he could actually file his homestead, but put it from February, and he'll get 11 months worth of exemption based off of that. And that's the way it should have been written to begin with.
Man, thanks for being with us here today. If our viewers want to get in touch with you, they need something. Where can they find you, Ali?
Well, we don't have a website, and frankly, because we're a boutique firm. But I'll give you my phone number. The office number here is 281-240-0101, and my extension is 302.
Great. Anything else you want to leave us with?
Good luck.
Thanks, Ali. And for the people at Jubally, we are glad for you to join us. If you have questions, you can always go to jubally.com/FAQS, our frequently asked questions section of our page. That's jubally.com/FAQS, or you can just message us on Facebook. Be happy to help you out with anything. Thanks a lot, and go give them hell.